see there. That's about right. All right, and let's see, according to the clock. Oh, it's time to start. Okay, let's just get Drinky Bird out of the way here. Thank you, Drinky Bird. And turn on the little light thingy. There we go. The light. Yeah, okay. It's 9 a.m. and I am podcasting from Portland, Oregon. I'm Teresa Mitchell. The name of this show is This Is Now, Bridge to a Better World. And I'm glad you can join me. Hi, John. Guten Morgen to you. This is going to be a short show because Ani's in Mexico. I don't know where exactly she is today, but she's in Mexico. And would like to wish you a peaceful Imbolc, and I hope that you can plant a seed today of one type or another. It can be really fun. So the first thing I want to bring up actually is my own self-defense. People like me are under ideological and legal attacks in ways that guarantee stochastic terror, starting with my cat, who's currently, oh, she's just getting into a bag. All right, well, those are the sounds of my cat enjoying a bag, which has been left sideways or made to be sideways so that she can, have a good cat time with it. Anyway, this is now Bridge to a Better World, and the stochastic terror comes out of the hateful attacks and the rhetoric and the laws that are being put in place to protect people from flying elephants and other things that are unlikely to harm them, like transgender people. Transgender people exist. As I've mentioned before, the Koch brothers and the Republican ideological hate industry decided to focus on transgender because we are a tiny population. People don't understand us, and so they can be made to hate us. And I want to ask you to help me and to help your fellow humans to thwart these attacks. And there's a number of ways you can do it, but one of them is just to say, well, I know a transgender person, and she doesn't hurt anyone. But another way is that you can point to the science. Now, this is set up in a way so that the science doesn't matter to a lot of people. To the real haters, it doesn't matter what the science is ever. But for people who are wondering what the heck's going on, the science is called Psychoneuroendocrinology, and that is 10 syllables, and it's difficult. I'm going to say it again, Psychoneuroendocrinology. That is the science of transgender people. And it is not as advanced as it could be because when it started in the 1920s, it was attacked literally by Nazis and burned to the ground. That was Magnus Hirschfeld's Sexual Institute. And so now the Nazis, the original Nazis, are gone. We have some new Nazis, and we have the MAGA Republicans and the MAGA Q, and we have a great deal of hatred. And so this is, I do not exaggerate, this is a threat to my existence and to the existence of anyone who is perceived as transgender. I'm in a relatively safe zone, but I tell you, the glares and the hatred are increasing. I'm just glad that I'm not in Texas. So I think that turning people to that science will help for the people who are willing to spend an hour or so reading about psychoneuroendocrinology, and we need an abbreviation for it. I'm going to work on that, and I think maybe I'll start calling it PSE, psychoneuroendocrinology. And this is something that, frankly, I've learned from the fascists. They set things into very small little bites. For example, diversity, inclusion, I'm getting this wrong, diversity, equity, and inclusion is being called DEI, which is funny to me because it means gods in Latin. But they can get their people to repeat DEI, DEI, we hate DEI. So the challenge now would be to put psychoneuroendocrinology out there and just call it PNE. And I'm going to put up some tweets and because that's, what do we got? And I'll try to put it on a couple of other social media so that people can repeat PNE and say, well, the science is called PNE. And if you're fancy, you can say psychoneuroendocrinology. So please help. the danger is increasing, especially to kids. I wish to God when I was a kid, if there was a God, I wish to God that there was a kid, that when I was a kid, excuse me, I could have had testosterone blockers. And I would not have had nearly such a fight. The whole thing just didn't exist then, so I'm not blaming anyone, but they do exist now, and angry and frankly stupid people are trying to stop it in the name of saving our kids, because of course you always want to save your kids. But the science, P&E, says they have nothing to worry about. So now let's get to some headlines. I want to talk about a few things that are going on, and then I have some comments. And it'll all be pretty short. Thanks for joining us, Tat. Trader Joe's is now Traitor Joe's. Should be spelled that way. I'm trying to think how to publicize it here in Portland. I'm thinking maybe I'll go to a Trader Joe's or two with a sign saying, "Stop attacking workers," because that's what they do. Trader Joe's. Aldi is now it's SCOTUS. And, I forget, it may be some adjunct of Aldi, but basically it's one of the German brothers that owns huge blocks of, it's a holding company that holds Trader Joe's. Your money goes to Germany. Excuse me. And we all love to go to Trader Joe's. I love to go to Trader Joe's. I'm not going to go while they're doing this, at least. I'm very much encouraging a boycott. Try to spread the word. I think there's a little bit of shock value. What, boycott Trader Joe's? Well, yes, because they are at the Supreme Court trying to destroy the National Labor Relations Bureau. NLRB enforces, and it has actually begun to enforce under the Biden administration, rules that keep employers from just aggressing horribly and firing employees who seek to form a union. We say that you have the right to form a union. Well, we don't without the NLRB. And Musk and Trader Joe's are really, they're trying to say that the NLRB is unconstitutional. And if the SCOTUS agrees to that, then it would have a wide-reaching effect that would gut what's left of regulatory capacity in the United States generally, but it would start with the workers. So please let people know what's going on about that. And again, I'm going to emphasize this in a minute. Get the details. Stop the hegemons. When I write hegemons, the writing corrector programs, spell check, don't like it. Like, do you mean Harry and the Hendersons? Stop the hegemons. Okay, changing subject. Bernie Sanders in Gaza. There's been a lot of complaints about Bernie Sanders not moving enough and fast enough on Gaza, and I think he deserves it. Love Bernie Sanders. He is not as blind as, say, John Fetterman, who simply rages against anyone who is against what Israel is doing. However, Bernie has proposed the invocation of the Human Rights Clause used for any country receiving U.S. aid, all countries receiving U.S. aid except Israel. But that's not the law. They are subject to human rights investigations because they're receiving aid. And unfortunately, the aid is also taking the form of 2,000-pound bombs and logistics and AI targeting and that sort of thing. So he applied that to the Senate. He actually got it onto the floor. The Senate rejected it 72-11. So that tells you how vicious and Kahanist the senators are now. And when I say Kahanist, that's another word that I want to get around. Mayor Kahane was a person who built an ideology of hate against all Arab persons. And he did this on the basis of the belief that the European colonialist settlers coming into what is now Israel and beating people up, shooting people, bombing people, and taking land were right to do so because they were superior in white. That's what it comes down to. There are people just screaming that this is not a white versus brown issue. That's a lie. Gaza is a white versus brown issue. Don't doubt it. Anyway, so Bernie tried to stop that. The former state of Israel, now a Kahanist genocide cult, is drawing forces together to continue extermination procedures in Rafah, which they formerly and jokingly labeled a safe zone. And you should see their jokes. Their jokes are horrible. They're all over YouTube and Twitter. U.S. propaganda organs like NBC, CBS, ABC, and the New York Times continue to pretend the Kahanists are defending themselves. I would like to see Israel defend itself against Netanyahu. Changing topics, the Atlanta cops, well, I guess it's not that much of a change of topics. The Israel-trained Atlanta cops are also at the courts trying to destroy the ability of churches and organizations to make bail for protesters. Excuse me. Protesters versus the Cop City Project, which would be sort of a Disneyland for cops smarting from the denouncement of their habitual racism, continue to be held in Atlanta as if they were prisoners of war, and they are. They're prisoners of war of a struggle against the American police state, which is, by the numbers, the worst in the world. Quoting the AP, changing topic. The Arctic is heating up almost 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And why is this happening? Similar reports call this Arctic amplification, and here's how it works. Normally, the polar ice reflects the sun's heat. It bounces off the Arctic region, but now that the ice is melting into the sea, there is no surface to reflect the sun's heat. All that warmth is being absorbed by the water, and the result is this faster Arctic warming, and that is what has shoved the icy weather down this far into Portland. So it's the end of that quote. And I'd like to add to this the fact that the methane signal, let me try that again, the methane signal, as the climate scientists call it, is increasing more than the sum total of factories, compost piles, cows, and Russian gas field leaks. In other words, it's coming out of the ground and the sea now. Now that this process has begun, something that was envisioned in the 1990s as a dire, far future threat for a century or so from now, the truly catastrophic part of global climate catastrophe is well underway. This year is going to be very bad. All succeeding years are going to be very bad. Geoengineering is a last desperate action. And this also was talked about only just a few years ago as something that hopefully could be avoided in the next century. Sadly, we have already geoengineered a catastrophe without conscious intent. Airline contrails at night, which, as we know from post 9/11 airline shutdown data, hold tremendous amounts of heat blocking infrared radiation to space that used to cool the planet. We know this from the temperatures that are a matter of public record when airlines were shut down generally across the United States and around the world. The ground temperatures at night dropped dramatically. And when I say dramatically, I mean across the board by a degree or 2 Fahrenheit. That's dramatic because it's impossible without some engine to make it happen. And the engine was the removal of airline contrails. Now, similarly, airline contrails block heat during the day. So I'm calling for, and I'm asking you to contact the FAA, to contact politicians and demand night contrails be banned. The FAA is already learning to push back on this idea. I say already learning. I've been saying this for more than a decade. They want to protect their former and future employees because there's a rotating door pseudo-regulation system in the FAA. The FAA is a perfect example of regulatory capture. They are very much subject to the industry. They're afraid of industry. And so they will say, oh, banning contrails at night wouldn't make any difference. They haven't conducted any studies. There was accidentally, as I mentioned, a study done. The facts are very clear. It's something they need to do. This is our desperate last-ditch effort to save ourselves. And I don't care if they don't like it. They need to be confronted with it constantly so that they are forced to come to the public and lie and say that it wouldn't work. Force them to lie. It's the first step. Hold to the facts. And this is where I urge you to, as those of you listening to me right now, I know you do this, but I urge you to compile your own facts following established climate scientists like glaciologist Jason Box. Works with psychoneuroendocrinology too. If you know the exact facts, if you can quote exactly the mechanisms, the knowledge about transgender persons, You're much more credible for anyone who actually cares about the facts. They will remember what you say if you learn to make it concise and if you're friendly to them, if it's part of your friendship with them. This can be effective. So where you have an audience of friends, you can make an impact by spreading your confident and fact-supported knowledge of the subject. It's much more effective than just stating your opinion. Give people details that they can chew on. Make them feel good about who they are with these facts. That's also very important because we're humans and we react to who we are first before we react to what the facts are when it comes to political issues like this. Show people the video of the loss of summer sea ice on the polar cap. Those series of images that show how it's shrinking year to year. It's terrifying. It's indisputable. Absolutely indisputable, and people will remember that. And it will become part of their activism. Tell your friends about how Antarctic, the other end of the sea ice, the other end of the globe, tell them about how the Antarctic glacial sea ice on the other side of the globe has become so light from undermining melting from the climate change that's already happened, that it is releasing magma-heated water from underneath, which is speeding the process so that these giant glaciers can fall into the water and then release the even more giant glaciers that are on land, which will cause sea levels to rise and will cause terrible storms, of course, with the unpredictable patterns, the disruption of the climate that result from these gigantic icebergs entering the oceans and creating more cool spots like the one that is south of Greenland. Turn to Jason Box. Now, this is an easy one to remember. Jason, B-O-X, Jason Box, a glaciologist who has finally, with great reluctance, entered the public arena with his knowledge because he never wanted to do that. He just wanted to do science. And I've followed his work for many years. He's a very honest man. Everything that he says is absolutely backed by solid facts. Again, indisputable. So I urge you to do that small amount of research and make it more than your opinion. Make it indisputable fact when you talk with your friends. Encourage them to become an activist in that way. And as I said, we will not have a tarot reading today because Ani is celebrating Imbolc in Mexico. And I see that you were on the comments there, Ani. Hi, Ani. And I'm so glad all of you could make it today. Please aggress on the like button and subscribe if you hadn't so that this can spread around a little bit. And that'll help with activism as well. And I love you all. And my love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea. Bye-bye now.